circumstances happened and I was almost killed like 6 times. And I thought, you know what? If I stand before God, I can't say that I'm ignorant or innocent. I know that you're real.
So Matthew, an Australian man, Jewish, believes in Jesus. How does that work?
It was a bit of a journey, and not necessarily something that I saw myself ending up as. I grew up in a bit of a neighborhood where, lower socioeconomic, very multicultural, but petty crime and gangs were the norm. It was a case of if you can't beat them, join them. Ended up, like most of the guys in my neighborhood, involved in gang culture. Also hip hop culture, which was sort of connected to that with illegal graffiti and stuff. Ended up, putting it out there to the universe after I went through some struggles with, friends dying or overdosing or getting locked up in prison. And I started to put some questions out there, and the Lord spoke to me through 2 separate individuals, one from a gang background and another one that had a calling from overseas to work with gang members and sort of, shared the gospel with me. And but the way it actually happened was, I was asked to paint a banner for the church. It was in my neighborhood, and the catch was that they were going to pay me at the youth service. And so I went to the church to collect the money. I had 2 of the guys that were involved in my crew and my gang with me. And it was all gibberish to me. I didn't understand anything that was going on in the service. But at the end of the service, people started to worship God. I was like, okay, I like music. But then I realized it was more than music, and I just felt this lump in my throat, like I was going to cry, but I thought I was a bit of a hard guy. So I was like, this is a bit awkward, a bit uncomfortable. And I looked at my friend to the left, and he sort of turned his head, and I was like, oh, wait a second, are you crying as well? And then the minister that we knew, he came up and said, oh, listen, would you guys like to give your lives to Jesus? And my friend that was next to me, he was like the heaviest dude that I knew.
What does that mean, heaviest?
Toughest, the best fighter, the one you didn't mess with. He went forward, and next minute they're praying and hugging and crying, and I was like, this is too weird for me, because I hadn't experienced anything like that before. And so I left. I jetted from the church because I was like, this is freaky. But that experience sort of gave me the understanding that God was real. Like, he sort of bypassed my brain and my heart and went straight to my soul. And then, even though I kept him at a distance because I knew that it required something, I just kept it there. But then circumstances happened and I was almost killed like 6 times. And I thought, you know what? If I stand before God, I can't say that I'm ignorant or innocent. I know that you're real. And so, even though the church was closed on this particular time, they were just packing up. I went and the minister was there, and I just said, listen, I need to give my life to Jesus. And
wow.
And so, I had a radical born again experience, not in a service, just while he was sweeping the floor. And
what does that mean to you? What does that mean, you had a radical born experience? What happened to you?
I was changed from the inside out, like my motives became different. God started to reveal things, via the Holy Spirit that, had been normal to me. Having a fight was normal, or like painting something illegal was normal. And I started to get convicted, and then things started to drop off, and he was changing me to become more in his image, And another part of that was, like for a lot of people into hip hop and involved in criminal activity, we have an issue with authority. We have an issue with the police, or, even when you're younger, school teachers or the government or things like that. And over time, as I started to take on more of a leadership role, I felt God wanted me to be in more of a leadership role within the body, And it was interesting actually at one stage because I was like one of the leaders in that sort of gang community. I had like 3 rows of gang members in the church,
Wow.
And funnily enough, some of those are still in the Lord and also serving as well in pastoral roles and bits and pieces, So
amazing how God's using you. So I know that growing up with Jewish heritage, celebrating Jewish customs and traditions, we're taught not to believe in Jesus. So was it ever a conflict with you? Did it ever feel weird, or did you ever feel stuck in between 2 worlds? I mean,
well, for me, like I was sort of like gravitating towards Judaism more from a cultural perspective than a religious an ethnic and cultural perspective. And so it didn't sort of like, even though I used the Jew card as like, don't tell me about this Jesus guy, to keep people at arm's length, ultimately when I did come to faith, it was actually because I knew that God was real, regardless of anything else, you know? But then I was like, what do I do with this?
Right.
You know, and so I'm like, oh, am I Jewish? Am I Christian? Am I what?
Yep.
You know, never heard the term Messianic Jew before. Like, what is that? You know what I mean? And fortunately, early into my walk, I came across Jews for Jesus, and they were like, okay, you don't have to throw out the baby with the bathwater. There are elements of your Jewish heritage that augment your Christian faith, you know, and add context. Things like the concept of Shabbat or Pesach, you know, it's like, it is so jam-packed with symbology that points to Mashiach, you know? So
what were you looking for in the gang lifestyle?
With gangs, like there's actually, it's gonna sound ironic, but there's positives, you know? There's sense of community, friendship, camaraderie, sense of protection, all these different things. But ultimately we know that they're not eternal. But also there's prices to pay for those things as well, you know? And even with subcultures as well, you know, it's like sense of identity. But we know that we only really understand our identity when we understand why God created us. I understand now that I have faith in Yeshua, that I'm part of this like massive lineage for a start, but also that things that I do have eternal ramifications, you know? And my hope is that I can leave an eternal impact with my life. And I think that's the calling of all of us, is to commune with God, you know, that's what we were created at the beginning, but also to help others to find that path as well.
Yeah.
You know?
There are people in the world right now that are watching this video in similar circumstances. What would you tell them?
I'd say for people that are in similar circumstances, that anything cultural, subculture is only really sort of, even church culture can only be temporal and can be shaky, you know? It needs to actually be a relationship with God, you know? And then everything sort of makes sense from an eternal perspective, but also you're not in it alone when you have a relationship with God. He helps you along the way, you know? And the reason why I know that it's real is because it's been real in my life. I've seen God's hand all the way through the journey. And I always use the term God's fingerprints. Like even before I knew him, I knew that there was God's fingerprints when I looked back in retrospect.
So my brother Matthew is an amazing artist, now a legal artist. Let's go check out some of his artwork. Yeah, so you just recently did this. Tell me a little bit about it.
Yeah, so we've just got some lettering through here, and then we've got images that sort of represent, you know, creative art stuff. So, you know, a spray can for the visual art, and then a boombox for music and dance, and yeah, just cool stuff, you know, like for my wife's heritage, some Pacific Island patterns and things like that. Yeah.
Nice, man.
And a little character of a dude.
You've left your mark here in Israel.
Hopefully. Yeah, literally, yeah.
Yeah, well, thank you, man. So thank you for sharing your testimony. Thank you for watching.
worries.
If you like this kind of content, give it a thumbs up. Stay tuned for more testimony videos like this. Put your comments down below. And once again, like the video, help YouTube push it out. Thanks for watching. Take care, and God bless you all.